Right now, you've got something on, and this morning, deciding what that would be probably took you all of a few seconds. Maybe you reached for whatever was on top of the pile. Maybe you glanced at the forecast first. Either way, you covered up before you stepped outside, because that's just what people do. We don't go out bare. Every society that has ever existed, in every climate, in every chapter of written history, puts something on. Now, you'd probably assume our ancestors started doing this for the obvious reasons. To stay decent, to stay protected, to stay warm. But not one of those is the actual reason we began covering ourselves. And once you learn what really pushed early humans to hide their bodies, it quietly rewires how you see fashion, culture, language, and what it means to be the one animal that catches its own reflection and feels the strange pressure of being looked at. Start with the timeline. Physically, humans like us have existed for something like 300,000 years. But dig into the evidence, and the first bone needles and hide-scraping tools don't turn up until roughly 120,000 years ago. And even that's a charitable read. Most textile historians put the point where clothing really caught on at around 75,000 years back, which means for the entire first half of our story, we were basically bare beneath that same African sun, facing thorns, bugs, and cold nights with nothing but the skin we were born in. And that single fact throws out the most popular answer right away: warmth. Sure, humans eventually pushed into colder places where clothes became a matter of life and death. But clothing shows up before that migration, while we were still baking in the tropics. So warmth is a later chapter, not the opening one. The next go-to explanation is protection. Thorns, sharp rocks, biting insects. And yes, that's part of the story. But here's the snag. If protection were the whole point, clothing would have started on the parts that actually get wrecked, the feet and the hands. Instead, in nearly every culture, the earliest coverings went over the torso and the groin first, the areas that get hurt the least. That's not a purely practical choice. That's a hint at something else going on. Then there's the lice theory, and honestly, this one's wild. Back in 2003, a team of geneticists zoomed in on something you'd never expect: lice. Specifically, the moment head lice and body lice split into two separate creatures. Head lice live in hair. Body lice live in clothing. They literally can't make it without fabric. So the researchers worked out when these two branches parted ways, and that hands us a clue about when humans started wearing clothes regularly enough for an entirely new species to build its whole life around them. The verdict? Roughly 170,000 years ago. That's the oldest hard biological timestamp we've got for clothing. Not a needle, not a scraper, but a parasite. A bug that evolved for one reason: to live inside what we wear. But that number only tells us when. It tells us the habit was already locked in by then. The true beginning reaches back further than we can currently measure. Whatever really started this runs deeper than fabric, deeper than needles, deeper than lice. And here's where researchers have started to land. Clothing wasn't a practical invention. It was a symbolic one. In 2009, archaeologist Ian Gilligan put out a detailed study on clothing and the way our minds work. His argument: deciding to cover your body isn't just a survival move. It reflects a deeper kind of thinking, the kind that separates us from every other animal. To wear something, you first have to picture a future version of yourself. You look at an animal hide, imagine yourself in it later, map out how to turn it into something wearable, and then go do it. Sounds simple. It isn't. It takes memory, forward planning, and the ability to think about a version of you that doesn't exist yet. The exact same mental machinery we use to keep a promise, plan out a day, or lie awake worrying about things that haven't even happened. No other animal pulls this off. A chimp doesn't study a leaf and imagine how handy it'll be tomorrow. But we did. And the instant we started covering our bodies, we weren't just shielding skin. We were proving, for the very first time, that we could see into the future. Clothing is one of the oldest physical fingerprints of the modern human mind. But there's something even deeper sitting underneath all that. Something most evolutionary biologists skip right past on this topic: shame. And not in the religious sense. Shame in the wiring of the brain sense. The awareness of being watched, the feeling that your body is out there being seen and sized up by other people. That is a purely human thing. It runs on what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to step outside your own head and imagine how you look through somebody else's eyes. Dogs don't have it. Crows don't have it. Even chimps, our nearest relatives, barely flicker with it. But somewhere down the line, we grew something more: the power to see ourselves the way others see us. And the moment that clicked into place, everything changed. Life stopped being only about staying alive. It became about how you came across, how you were read, what you were signaling. From then on, clothing was never just cover. It turned into a tool for building identity, for steering the image people had of you. The first person to wrap a hide around their shoulders wasn't only chasing warmth. In a very real way, they were deciding how they wanted to be seen, and once that idea took root, it never let go. You can spot it in cultures all over the planet, even in places where clothing does nothing for warmth. Pockets of the Amazon, islands scattered across the Pacific, people still adorned themselves. Beads, paint, feathers, woven fibers, tattoos. There was always something. Because the body was never just a body. In fact, researchers comparing clothing across cultures keep bumping into the same pattern. The urge to dress seems to speed up exactly when human societies get more tangled and complex. As bands swelled into bigger groups, as ranks and pecking orders formed, as strangers started crossing paths with strangers, clothing became a piece of social technology, a way to say a lot without saying anything. Before a single word left your mouth, your clothes had already announced who you were, which group claimed you, whether you were a danger or a friend, whether you stood above or below the person in front of you. Clothing is a language, one of the oldest we've ever had. And here's the part worth pausing on, because it's happening to you today. You throw on clothes every morning, barely thinking about it. But your brain is running something ancient and intensely social every single time. You're not just grabbing fabric. You're assembling a version of yourself to beam out into the world. You're quietly negotiating between who you actually are, who you want to be seen as, and what the moment demands. That flicker of dread when you turn up somewhere overdressed or underdressed, or the second you realize you've worn exactly the wrong thing. That's 170,000 years of social wiring lighting up at once. That's your brain running the same math your ancestors ran around the fire. We nailed the basics ages ago. Cold, survival, protection, and then we just kept going. Our clothing grew more detailed, more deliberate, because it was never really about the body. It was about the mind. The part of us that never forgets it's being watched. Clothing didn't just cover us. It manufactured a version of us. We didn't start dressing because we were freezing. We started because we woke up, aware that other eyes were on us. And that has never once switched off. Tomorrow you'll get dressed like you always do. But under that autopilot, something ancient is still running. You're not just picking out clothes. You're choosing how to be seen. The same instinct we've carried for thousands of years.